Hey everyone, welcome to the Week 7 edition of the Waiver podcast here on the RotoWire Podcast Network. We have big trade news. Of course, Davante Adams traded earlier today to the Jets. That was not a surprise, but Amari Cooper going to the Bills is a surprise. So we're going to react to that from a fantasy perspective and also talk about our waiver wire pickups. Good news on the trade front is that we didn't have a whole lot of other like major waiver wire guys. It's one of the more mundane ones we've had this season. So we'll spend some time discussing Amari Cooper's trade value, what that means to Davante Adams as well too, along with our top 5 waiver wire pickups. So we're going to get right to it with music. Again, welcome over to the Tuesday edition of the RotoWire NFL podcast brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. We're going to talk about waiver wire pickups entering week 7, of course. Keep you updated from the trade perspective about Amari Cooper, Davante Adams, and the fallouts from both those teams and what that will mean in the future. So I know Jake had kind of sprung the Bills and Browns news on you, just so you and the listeners are aware, if you had not checked your phone. 3rd round pick and 7th round pick for Amari Cooper from the Bills, and Davante Adams was traded for effectively a 3rd round pick. It's technically conditional, so the Raiders don't look so dumb, but he has to be an all-pro, either first or second team, and be on the conference championship team for the Jets for that to convert to second rounder. So 3rd round pick.
I can see the first part happening,
Adams.
maybe not so much the second part, the conference championship.
See, and I don't see the first part at all. Like maybe the Jets still get there by some miracle.
Davante Adams is going to be awesome the rest of the way out. I'm really excited about the Davante Adams that I do have.
So we're gonna do both these conversations because I disagree a little bit on the Davante Adams stuff, and I'm very curious to hear about the Amari Cooper side of things for you. It's been a hot topic button, at least at the office here now, Amari Cooper's value. So we're going to get to those, but I do want to spend some time talking about our top 5 waiver wire list. Yeah. Again, it's a bit mundane relative to the past couple of weeks. There's been heavy hitters, and frankly, if you have been listening to our show last week, a lot of the guys we covered as like smaller items would have been the targets now for this week. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, there are a couple of retreads. So let's just kick things off at the top 5. This is the waiver wire show. We'll discuss, the trades within context here. But number 1, in case you didn't watch Monday Night Football last night, James Cook was out with an ankle or a toe injury.
Surprise.
And, a big surprise for a lot of people. I went against at least one person who had James Cook in their starting lineup.
Yep. I wrote the note saying that James Cook was expected to play Saturday. Like that was the
trending
by
towards
multiple
play. Yep.
Yes, multiple people had said that. So I just assumed I was down by 6 in one of my leagues. I just assumed I'm going to lose to James Cook, and then he was out. I could have blocked the guy who picked up Ty Johnson. I didn't want to be that kind of dude. It was not that sort of competitive fantasy league, but turns out Ty Johnson wasn't the guy. Who was it?
Yeah, it was Ray Davis, and Ray Davis is going to be my number 1 waiver wire pickup this week because very similar to the Tyrone Tracy discussion we had last week, if and when James Cook comes back, Ray Davis has proven that he earned a role. I mean, he went out there and, do I have the stat line written down? He 20 carries for 97 yards, plus caught all 3 of his targets for 55. And this isn't like DeAndre Swift doing it against the Jaguars. This is the New York Jets, right, where their defense is actually good. They're a solid defensive team. And Ray Davis came out and carved him up pretty much, outside of the fact that he didn't score. He pretty much had a better game than James Cook has had really for most of the year. So what does this tell you? James Cook has a turf toe, which is going to be a nagging injury, right? There's no cure for it unless you're a lineman and cut the toe off, right? So there's no cure. There's no cure for that. And yeah, he'll come back and he'll play, but how effective will he be? Meanwhile, the Bills have a Ray Davis who is incredibly effective, only 14% rostered. If you catch him another week when James Cook is out, it's RB2 territory for sure, and then he still might be a flexible option, even when Cook's back as he starts to dig into the timeshare. So Ray Davis is number 1. Number 2 for me is Demario Douglas. We hinted at this last week in our conversation when we found out that Drake Maye was taking over. Now all of a sudden Demario Douglas, especially in those PPR leagues, you could arguably make him the number 1 overall pickup in PPR leagues because of the volume that he gets and the fact that he's going to help you rest of season. He's a viable wide receiver 3, I think, in PPR the rest of the way. He's only 7% rostered, so go grab him while you can. Number 3, this was an interesting one. Of course, this goes right into our trade discussion here, and that's Jerry Jeudy of the Cleveland Browns. It's a last man standing situation in Cleveland, and I don't really know how much longer they can keep up this Deshaun Watson trade. And but either way, I mean, Jerry Jeudy is the number one option there. I know they have Njoku back. I think he'll get a boost in value as well. But with Amari Cooper going over to the Bills, it's Jerry Jeudy. He's only 39% rostered, so I'm taking him there. Do you have anything to add on that before I
think there's actually going to be like a larger conversation. We already have Scott in the chat ask about Amari Cooper. So let's just continue our top 5 waiver wire pickup list, and then we'll circle back like as a second segment on Amari Cooper and Davante Adams, because there is fantasy fallout. People are going to care about that. So let's keep going with the list.
Yeah, okay. So number 4, I put Isaac Guerendo of the 49ers here. Go all the way back to Thursday night. Jordan Mason had a shoulder injury. He left the game, then came back for one snap in the second half, left the game permanently after that. We know Christian McCaffrey is out week 7. Who knows about beyond that? Jordan Mason has the AC joint sprain. He's day-to-day. And Guerendo seems to be the guy. So the first iteration of this list that I did, I had Guerendo at number 1. But then I eventually backed off and moved him down because the value is very short term. 75% of his yards came on one play at the end. Now, granted, it showed some big playability. The dude is fast, 4.3 speed, and he won any RB1 in this offense. There's no doubt about that. But actually, looking at the snap counts from Jerry's box score breakdown today, Patrick Taylor actually played more snaps in the second half than Guerendo. So Patrick Taylor, we're very familiar with him from the time with the Packers.
Yep.
But so he actually played more snaps. So the fact that all of Guerendo's explosive, he's interesting. But the fact that he is not even their RB3, apparently, according to the snap counts, that Jordan Mason might be back and that McCaffrey will, I assume, eventually be back. I downgraded Isaac Guerendo to number 4, but he could still very well have some good short-term utility. And number 5's a retread from last week. We talked about Juju Smith-Schuster. I picked him up in a couple places. Actually, one place I was forced to cut him immediately after spending fab due to other injuries on the rosters. That's always a pain, a delightful fantasy thing to do. But a lot of people either didn't pick him up last week or or had to cut him because he was on a bye. Juju Smith-Schuster is 32% rostered. If you remember the last time the Chiefs played, Juju was basically Rashee Rice. He was getting the targets, the deep targets across the middle. He turned back the clock. Juju isn't as old as we think he is because he's been around for a long time, but he's still theoretically in his athletic prime. You got a quarterback like Mahomes and an offense where he's definitely not the first option to defend. I think you have to go back to Juju. So Ray Davis, Demario Douglas, Jerry Jeudy, Isaac Guerendo, and Juju Smith-Schuster are my top 5 pickups this week.
One of the very few times that we'll do this show, and I'll effectively agree with you on the top 5 list. We're going to get to, again, the ramifications of the Raiders trade with Davante Adams and the Browns, and also Bill's aspect of Amari Cooper in just a second. But more or less, I'm right with you, top 5. For me, Demario Douglas is number 1. I think we had mentioned that towards the end of last show. You maybe pushed back a little bit that Jalen Polk was going to be more involved. I was pretty confident Demario Douglas was going to be the number 1 player. And Drake Maye is going to make that offense look better as opposed to the 31st or 30th worst offense in the league. We're talking about now like 20th through 18th, and Drake Maye is going to have that opportunity. So Demario Douglas, one of those guys you can pick up rest of season, and there is no, this guy needs to get injured for Douglas to play. He's going to play and be a factor right away. The same reasoning. Juju Smith-Schuster is number 2 on my list. You've mentioned, I think we have covered him now a couple weeks in a row. If he was dropped in shallower leagues from a full point PPR perspective, you're talking about a guaranteed 12 points. I mean, that's what I feel like Smith-Schuster is going to have, even if the Chiefs have a run-oriented offense like we anticipate. And then my final 3 is effectively some of these running backs, whether it be Ray Davis, whether it be Guerendo. Worth pointing out, Christian McCaffrey, of course, will not return this week. The Niners have a Week 9 bye. Jake, I don't know about you, but the idea of rushing him back for the Cowboys in Week 8, then bye week, then McCaffrey playing doesn't make sense. And you can play on a dislocated shoulder. You as an offensive lineman in high school probably played plenty of different injuries, but you can slap a shoulder harness on there and still run. You can't do pass catching stuff, but Mason could run. Yeah. So Guerendo is a little bit lower on my list because I think it's possible that Jordan Mason and Guerendo could be a factor.
They can shoot him up with Toradol. He'll be fine.
Exactly. And then the final one that we should at least mention is Kamani Vidal. Now, I had missed this because the Chargers were on bye last week. I covered the Chargers for RotoWire. Gus Edwards, despite the bye week, was placed on injured reserve Saturday, which means he cannot play for the next 4 weeks. So it's J.K. Dobbins who got 25 carries against the Broncos, but then there needs to be another one. Yes, and Vidal is going to be a good player in the league. Even if J.K. Dobbins is getting 20 carries a week, that doesn't mean Vidal is bad, but it's the same reasoning, and it's a fluky reasoning. I know you don't like it, Jake, for Blake Corum. Like if Kyron Williams were to go down, Blake Corum immediately becomes our top waiver wire pickup.
And J.K. Dobbins has a far more extensive injury history than Kyron Williams to make that analogy run. And Vidal could be a pass catcher for that team too. So I think Vidal joins that group. That was his score. Was a receiving touchdown, right? Both
Yeah, it
his
was a
targets,
wheel route that was designed for him. It was
which
one of
is
those.
a good sign that
It is,
the
yes.
RB2 is getting plays
Yep.
designed for him. I had overlooked him a little bit, but then I'm looking at this. They got Hassan Haskins as RB3 and Gus Edwards is an IR. So
And
yeah,
Hassan Haskins was playing ahead of Vidal earlier this season. It was a
hmm
special teams thing. Like Vidal
yep,
wasn't active and Hassan Haskins
hmm
was.
yeah,
Don't worry about that. Now, from a practical, we need to use this player perspective, Vidal has clearly been utilized more for the Chargers.
hmm
So Vidal is on my list. I know in deeper leagues, that's probably the only name. And frankly, in most of the deep leagues, he's already been picked up. So
yeah.
it's a bit of a mundane one.
hmm
Scott's asking, and I think it's a fair question. If James Cook were to come back again from the turf toe, which he was surprisingly ruled out for Monday, where does Ray Davis where does Ray Davis rank?
I mean, he falls from a surefire RB2 to a low end flex.
Yeah, I think that's a fine spot. I mean, where was Trey Sermon the past couple of weeks with Jonathan Taylor out? I think that's kind of the way
Ray
we
Davis is better than Trey Sermon.
Ray Davis is definitely better, but the
Yeah.
situation is a bit more ambiguous. That's
Sure.
where I'm going with this. That
Mhm.
James Cook could maybe play, whereas we know effectively Jonathan Taylor is going to miss at least 2 weeks. We'll see. High ankle sprain is normally 4 weeks. We're at 2 to 4. Trey Sermon could probably be on our list, but he was pretty bad in that win over the Titans. So it's a tough spot, I think, frankly, for week 7 waiver wire guys. I mean, that's a fair statement, right?
Yeah, and a lot of it is going to be just watching the injury reports and maybe waiting. Unless you need a receiver and Pop Douglas or Judy or Juju are out there, I could see just waiting out the running back situation and not wasting fab on people, and then seeing who's left on Thursday before Thursday Night Football.
No, I absolutely agree. So that is our top 5 list, effectively the same guys that we have for both Demario Douglas in some combination with Jerry Jeudy, Isaiah Garendo, Juju Smith-Schuster. Maybe you could throw Kamani Vidal in there. I mean, like it's a tougher list overall. But I want to take a break because we should talk about both these trades, Davante Adams and Amari Cooper, and what it means for all 4 factors as part of this deal. But first, a word from our sponsors. We're proud to partner with Underdog Fantasy for the NFL season. Underdog Fantasy, of course, is the easiest place to play fantasy sports, and it's also the fastest growing fantasy app in the industry. In addition to their popular best ball contests, Underdog also offers great DFS pick'em games. You can pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on their stat total in this week's games for a chance to win big. And you could win up to 1,000 times your money in a single night by picking between the 2 and 8 players to build a pick'em entry. They have different offers going on every single week, especially some boosts out there. So definitely check out the Underdog app. Sign up with RWNFL to claim your free pick plus first time deposit offer up to 1,000 in bonus cash. Visit UnderdogFantasy.com or find them in the App Store. And don't forget to register with promo code RWNFL to claim your first free pick and first time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Must be 18+ years or older, 21 in Massachusetts, Arizona, 19 in Alabama and Nebraska, and present in the state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms and conditions apply. Consider whether they play. Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. Arizona 1-800-NEXT-STEP, 1-800-639-8783, or text NEXT STEP to 53342. And New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Okay, we'll get to the quarterbacks and kind of build up more of the running back and receiver conversation, but this will kind of all meld together. Again, for those of you who have been sleeping under a rock or just not getting notifications to your phone, Davante Adams was predictably traded to the Jets earlier today. Mike Williams is available on the trade block if you want him at all. I don't know if any team will. I think Mike Williams might sooner just be cut by the Jets, but a conditional 3rd-round pick, Davante Adams has to be a all-pro first or second team, and the Jets need to make the conference finals in order for that to convert to a 2nd-round pick. So Raiders taking all the money, I believe, and getting that 3rd-round pick out of the Davante Adams trade. From the Raiders' perspective, we have Aiden O'Connell as your starting quarterback. He didn't look good. That was pretty predictable. Jacoby Myers also missed this game as well. So it was Trey Tucker and DJ Turner, not the Bengals corner.
Goose egg, by the way.
Oh yeah, on my stake league team. Yeah, it was wonderful. I loved it a whole lot.
Only 2 targets too, which is a little bit concerning.
I think the immediate answer is, well, if you could trade anything for Brock Bowers, do so. But that doesn't really help anyone that's listening because I don't think that's like a.
And if I'm the Bowers owner, I'm holding on to him.
Yeah, you shouldn't. I'd
have to be getting a pretty spectacular offer.
So it's not really actual. I think Trey Tucker in deeper leagues, like Stake League, for example, 14 teams, shallow benches, or the NFFC. I know Trey Tucker in both of our NFFC leagues is already picked up. But even with the goose egg, he's a guy that you consider. DJ Turner is also a really fast player or fast receiver for the Raiders. But realistically, and we're talking about one of the worst offenses, if not the worst offense in the league, in Aiden O'Connell throwing the football. Maybe if Gardner Minshew is back as your starter, I would have some interest in Trey Tucker and DJ Turner. But right now, I'm rostering Turner, and that's about it.
At the very least, Trey Tucker is out there for 95% of snaps and ran routes on 98% of the dropbacks. So he's getting volume theoretically. What that means
theoretically, yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, not theoretically. He's getting volume, which should theoretically mean that there's upside there. But
he's playing, but the volume is not theoretical. He only had 2 targets. It's crazy. It's a tough offense. Again, if Gardner Minshew is in there, it's maybe a different scenario for me. But Alexander Mattison wasn't all productive in his work. Samir White was again out. I don't want anything to do with the Raiders' offense. From the Jets side of things, again, Davante Adams going to the Jets. They still have Allen Lazard. Call me Hail Mary, Allen Lazard. You still have Garrett Wilson, another really good game. Does this impact Garrett Wilson more than it impacts Davante Adams? And I'm asking this question as somebody that has a few shares of Davante. I know, as the one league that I have Davante Adams, I think it impacts Davante more, but Garrett Wilson probably takes a bit of a bump down. Is that a one-for-one fair statement?
Yeah, that's the consensus. I'm more optimistic about Davante than I was in Oakland or in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
In Las Vegas, even when he was playing. And he had some good games in there. I think he maybe had one dud, but he had a couple good games in there. I'm actually more optimistic just because, as you can see by the reemergence of Allen Lazard with the Jets, Rodgers likes his guys, and Davante is his guy. Davante has built a Hall of Fame career on the foundation of being Rodgers' guy, and I think Rodgers will look at Davante disproportionately. They have their timing on their routes down. There are special plays. It's that kind of chemistry where there's a head nod, and that's it, and they know what to do, right? So how does this not hurt Garrett Wilson? It definitely does. A player as talented as Garrett Wilson will still get some volume. Will still be an okay receiver, but you're any hope of him living up to his ADP, if that wasn't already out the window, it definitely is now, right? He would be, if you redrafted today, Garrett Wilson would be like a 5th, 6th round pick, something like that.
Can we put some action to this? Because I'm curious. This is conversation. It's important. Again, the waiver wire kind of a little bit less. So I really want to know what your thoughts are on Garrett Wilson, because I think you could make trades either for or against him right now. Would you rather have Garrett Wilson rest of season or Stephon Diggs, knowing Nico Collins, again, out for the next 3 games?
Stephon Diggs.
Stephon Diggs, I would too. How about Brandon Ayuk or Garrett Wilson?
I'd have Garrett Wilson.
I'd have Garrett Wilson as well too. How about Jaden Reed, rest of season, or Garrett Wilson?
Ooh.
That's a tough one, right?
Yeah, so that's the line then, right? I think I'm saying Jaden Reed.
I think I'm saying Jaden Reed as well too. And then the other one I was going to ask you is DJ Moore for the Bears or Garrett Wilson. Now the Bears on bye this week, so maybe that helps things a little bit too.
That's another really tough, close one. But with Keenan Allen back, taking some of that volume, I think I'm going Garrett Wilson.
So we would rather have Jaden Reed over Garrett Wilson, but we'd rather have Garrett Wilson over DJ Moore. That feels right to me. I mean,
DJ Moore, Jaden Reed line. Yeah, and those were 4th round picks, 5th round picks.
Well, I think if we're doing a redraft now, Jaden Reed is probably back
higher.
in the 2nd, early 3rd round, and Stephon Diggs is in that range. So I think you'd still have Garrett Wilson in the 3rd round. It would be ahead of a lot of guys like the Terry McLaurins. You take Garrett Wilson over Marvin Harrison, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, I mean it's a really.
That's really tough.
So I
might take Marvin Harrison.
Marvin Harrison. Okay. And Scott says it as well too. Could Garrett Wilson be the Devonta Smith like when AJ Brown came over? My answer is yes. I mean, it's certainly possible. I think Garrett Wilson's really good. The only difference is Jalen Hurts doesn't discriminate on who he's throwing to, whereas Aaron Rodgers definitely does. Like I like to throw the ball to Davante Adams more. I know what he's doing, and therefore I'm going to make that target even if it's close. And then there's also Allen Lazard, who I don't think goes completely away. If you're in a 10-team league, Allen Lazard could probably be dropped, but in deeper leagues, you still hold on to him. Like Lazard's
in the initial version of this before this morning, I had a note in the receiver section. Oh, Lazard's just 41% rostered. Had another good game on Monday night, but now, I don't think you could really start him. And by the way, Davante Adams, they expect him to come in and play this week away.
That was all the reports, which is great. So I'm gonna say this now. I really want to know. I'm gonna be compiling as many answers. I do a lot of different media stuff throughout the week. I want to know if you pull off any trades for Garrett Wilson, either sending him away or trading for him, tweet at me, JB Fantasy Sports. I want to know if you're acquiring Garrett Wilson, send him away. Because I want to get a compilation of this. And I also want to get a compilation if you are trading away Amari Cooper or acquiring Amari Cooper. Because there has to be consensus for this. And from my understanding, again, just talking to the guys that are super smart at the office, Amari Cooper's fantasy value has risen significantly. Again, this happened maybe an hour before our show, goes to the Bills for a 3rd and 7th round pick. Of course, the Bills pulled off the miracle win over the Jets last night, thanks to Greg Zuerlein doinking the uprights twice in a game. The wins in Meadowland were messing things up once more. Bills are survive and win 23-20. The receiving core was not fantastic. Matt Collins caught a touchdown. Keon Coleman has been doing some things. Curtis Samuel, it feels like he's not been involved. I mean, the name Amari Cooper is a significant fantasy name and will be going to a situation that has 0 significant fantasy name. But
100%.
When is the last time a mid-season trade, which this is, has made a direct and actionable fantasy impact? Now, we might say the answer is going to be Davante Adams next year, because that will, but it's a different circumstance with Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean,
what does Amari Cooper look like in this trade?
I'll answer the question with the question. When has a midseason fantasy trade caused a player's value to improve, or circumstances to improve this much? He goes from a terrible organization, a losing team, a historically bad quarterback, historically bad, like over the last 10, 15 years. This is a bad start for Deshaun Watson, and he goes to a winning team, a winning organization with a winning mentality, and, you know, the number 1 fantasy quarterback, top 5 real life quarterback, I'd say. I've always been a Josh Allen believer. So yeah, this is big time for him. It can only help. And I mean, as far as what are you doing if you have Amari Cooper? Well, you move him into your starting lineup instead of benching him, I think, because I was just about at that point where I was benching him. And trading him becomes tough, because if you had him, it's going to be really tough. I think people have an inherent bias. It's going to be tough to give the guy away now that he's suddenly worth way more, right? But I'd still hear offers, but I have a real hard time pricing that, what I'd give up.
Is he worth way more is where I'm going with this. So, and I'm posing the question again. I want people to send me either Garrett Wilson or Amari Cooper's on JB Fantasy Sports on Twitter. I want to know what other people have deemed the value to be, because I think that'll make up my consensus. I do a lot of different media stuff throughout the week. I don't really have a solid answer for this. But Lee was saying, well, CMC was a midseason trade that was impactful. I'm saying midseason receiver trade. When was the last impactful midseason receiver trade? And I was saying it's Emmanuel Sanders when he went, I think, from the Broncos to the 49ers.
Brandon Cooks was okay after getting traded, I think.
We did a show. We always do a show on the trade deadline, and that one actually made a difference. But we've talked about Chase Claypool before. There's been other receivers. The real answer to this actually is Amari Cooper. Now, I had forgot about it, but it was Amari Cooper traded from the Raiders to the Cowboys mid-season, where he ended up going for nearly 750 yards over the course of the last 7 or 8 games. And maybe that's the right point, but it was Dak Prescott. It's a different offense. My biggest issue, and I could be absolutely wrong, I'm not blaming anyone if they want to be aggressive in ranking Amari Cooper high rest of season. This isn't Davante Adams going with his best buddy to play in a passing scheme that they know.
Yeah,
it's Amari Cooper going to a different division, to a different team, different weather. And yes, it's better than Deshaun Watson. But we just saw Joe Brady, offensive coordinator for the Bills, not use number 1 receiver, Stephon Diggs, all of last season. And the Bills were successful and they're winning. And they don't have a number 1 receiver now, and they're still successful and winning. I think it'll help the Bills team, but I'm not trading up a major asset for Amari Cooper. I'm going the other way that, by default.
This is a hold situation through and through, because if you're looking to acquire him, you're obviously going to have to pay a lot more than you did yesterday. And if you're rostering him, you're going to want more than someone's willing to offer. So it's a hold situation through and through. Last thing I'll say on Amari Cooper is he's been around forever, right? Everyone, you think in your head that he's old because he's in the league first in 2015. Guy's 30, right? So it's not like he's over the hill or anything. He's theoretical athletic prime here. And I agree with Mark here. Cooper is probably going to go off.
And I disagree. So can we play the trade game one more time? It's going to be way harder again.
This one's going to be way harder.
This is way harder. Would you trade Amari Cooper for Deebo Samuel?
If someone was offering me Deebo, because I want Deebo.
You want, okay, so I guess which side you want more.
Yeah, I'd take Deebo, yep.
Marvin Harrison or Amari Cooper?
Marvin Harrison.
Okay, and then Brandon Ayuk or Amari Cooper?
Amari Cooper.
Chris Olave or Amari Cooper?
Amari Cooper.
Okay. I think that's the line. Seriously, please, JB Fantasy Sports on Twitter, if you pull off a trade for Amari Cooper or trade him away, I want to see what it is out there. I'll be doing a number of these different hits throughout the week, and I don't have an idea. I'm trading away Amari Cooper right now, today, no matter what, because I think his fantasy value will be highest today. I am not convinced that number one receiver for the Bills is going to be that much more impactful than what he was getting for the Browns. 4 for 35, 4 for 60, 4 for 42. These were against really bad defenses in the Eagles and Commanders over the last 3 weeks. He will be better. But I think everyone's assuming it's Amari Cooper 8 for 100. And I think it's going to be more like Amari Cooper 5 for 65 and maybe scores a touchdown. That's not enticing to me, and I think the name of Amari Cooper,
still a vast improvement over what's been happening this
year.
No,
I just read out 4 for 35, 4 for 60, 4 for 42. 5 for 65 is a 3-point difference.
Yeah, okay.
Fair. I mean, that's not
from his best dramatic. Game.
Well, his best game was 7 for 86 and 2 touchdowns against the Giants. Jake, how dare you?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. I wanted to spend time on this because I think it's going to be a hot button point. You can definitely make moves on either Davante Adams or Amari Cooper today. But if you do make them, please at me on Twitter, JB Fantasy Sports, send me an image, maybe give me some of the roster reasons as to why you did it, because I want to know what the plan is. So we had talked about our top 5 list. Again, just for everyone out there, Ray Davis, Demario Douglas, Jerry Jeudy was in there, Isaac Guerrero, Juju Smith-Schuster. I had thrown in Kamani Vidal as well, too. It's a list that we've went over for a lot of these people before, not a whole lot of action. But the quarterback position did change a little bit, and we'll get to that after the break. It's football season, and the best place to catch the games is, of course, at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. It's featuring the best pool in history, Stadium Swim, 3 levels, 6 pools, and a 143-foot diagonal screen, whether it's Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. There's probably going to be games Wednesday at some point, Jake. Stadium Swim is America's favorite place to watch football. No matter the size of your group, Stadium Swim is the place for you. And from owner suites to cabanas, day beds to stadium booths, there are seating choices for everyone. And the best part, Stadium Swim is open 365 days a year. With the temperature-controlled pools, it's a great place to catch the games all season long. Stadium Swim located at Circa Resort and Casino in downtown Las Vegas. Book today at circalasvegas.com. All right, quarterback position. We have a positive for once when it comes to the streamers.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, we have to start with the new developments that could be starters, but Drake Maye, of course, we caught that at the very end of the show last week, tried to get that in, but he came out and against the Texans, 20 for 33, 243 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also threw 2 picks and lost a fumble, but you're going to take the good and bad here with Drake Maye. He's only 6% rostered. Chances are he was picked up in Superflex immediately after Friday's announcement, or after the last week's announcement. But he's interesting. He's at Jacksonville this week, which is actually at London, right? Or no, wait.
Yep. They're 2 consecutive weeks. Yeah, against the Patriots. So it's at Jacksonville, but it's in London. Doug Peterson gets fired next week.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Anyway, so they're ranked 32nd. Dead last here against opposing quarterbacks in fantasy. After that, the schedule gets a lot tougher for Drake Maye. So he's a stream this week and then probably back to the bench because he plays the Jets, Titans, and Bears. Those last 2 are on the road, and those are all top 5 defenses against opposing quarterbacks. So things get tough for Drake Maye, but a great matchup this week. And grab him now before people think he's just a flash in the pan, and he might actually be able to help you. The other big kind of quarterback news this week.
Buried today.
Yeah, it was buried with all the trade news. But Russell Wilson is in line to start and make his Steelers debut week 7, again, versus the Jets. So pretty tough matchup against the Jets, but it's actually smooth sailing after that. He's got the Giants, then a bye week, then the Commanders and the Ravens, who are all bottom third teams in terms of fantasy against or points allowed to opposing quarterbacks here. Russell Wilson and Drake Maye, suddenly you have viable starters. Now, granted, the teams on bye this week are the Cowboys and the Bears. Dak Prescott and Caleb Williams should probably be rostered, but they're not necessarily your QB1, right? So your chances are you're going back to your old QB1. But if you need to stream this week, Justin Herbert is 41% rostered at Arizona. We just saw
Yeah.
Jordan Love tear up Arizona. I think there could be points scored in this game. So
Real quick,
Justin
Herbert looked good in the first half, and that's all they needed to do. They got out to a 21
Yep.
nothing lead or 23 nothing lead, and Herbert was passing a lot. That was the most that I've seen Herbert pass this season, and it's a reminder of just how great of a quarterback he is. It's stupid he's buried behind Greg Roman's offense, but I love Justin Herbert, the quarterback, and he did look good in that first half.
Yeah, again, that's why I was knowing this year was going to be rough on weapons and rough on situation and new circumstance. I still took him in Dynasty because I believe in Justin Herbert. Matchup at Arizona. I don't really care for Aaron Rodgers, 41% at Pittsburgh. It's a tough defense, even with his reinforcements here. Yeah, even with his reinforcements here. Matt Stafford is actually interesting. He's 37% versus Las Vegas. So he's at home. We don't know for sure he'll get cut back. He's kind of being tested, but it's possible that happens. And Puka Nacua, I think Jay Glazer said it won't be until week 8. So I put Stafford on here because his value definitely stands to grow from where it is now. And obviously he was cut by a lot of teams with the Rams on a bye last week. So, but it is the Raiders. So I think with the ragtag bunch they have, he can still have a productive game against the Raiders. As much as I wanted to say Deshaun Watson at home against the Bengals, I think it's last call on Deshaun Watson here, right? I mean, the Bengals' defense has been atrocious, except, of course, in prime time against the Giants.
Daniel Jones, yeah.
I mean, Tyrone Tracy still had a good game, which, we'll get to that there. So Deshaun Watson, theoretically, I keep saying that, but just he has a good matchup against the Bengals. I don't know if I'm picking him up to stream him, especially when only 2 teams are on bye this week. So, if anything, you're grabbing him off the wire in a Superflex league because somebody got frustrated. So that's that. Speaking of Superflex leagues, Spencer Rattler got the start with Derek Carr out. It wasn't Hayner. And then I just straight up wrote a line, Will Levis sucks. They'll probably go back to Mason Rudolph.
Did you see any of the Saints at all? I mean, we're going to find out Thursday here. Again, Derek Carr likely not playing Thursday. Broncos, Saints, our first bad Thursday night football game of the year. Thank you, NFL, for waiting 7 weeks into the season to give us a bad one. No one wants to see the former coach go back to his old team as if that matters from a viewing perspective. Like, come on. So I thought Spencer Rattler played way better than I was anticipating, and I didn't just have a negative view of him.
Played better than the box score indicated. He helped him move the ball a little bit and was interesting. I mean, it's super flex at best because they're probably going to have Olave out. We don't.
You'd assume short week and that concussion.
Yeah, short week and concussion. So no Olave, and it's and you're playing. I mean, so it's Denver, right? And Patrick Surtain may be out. You definitely want to look.
I was going to say Patrick Surtain might also be out, and then Rashid Shaheed did get injured as well too, and he's having his knee looked at. He was a non-participant in Wednesday's walkthrough practice. Whatever.
I didn't know that at all.
It's going to be tough. I think the over-under for that game, if I was looking, was like the 35 range, and that's never where I want to be when it comes to Saints Broncos. But yeah, I thought Spencer Rattler played better than I was anticipating, but that doesn't mean a whole lot. I would actually, from a real perspective, if you're streaming quarterbacks, Andy Dalton against the Commanders defense, it's probably another play. They just lost Jonathan Allen, I think, for the rest of their season, their stud nose tackle. Okay. That's kind of like losing Derek Brown for the Panthers defense. That might make a big difference.
Yeah, no, I can see that. And yeah, might as well.
Let's also get a word from our sponsors here. DraftKings Pick 6 here, and I think we get a word from our sponsor, friend of the show, Nick Whalen.
We're proud to be brought to you by DraftKings Pick 6. So many NFL offerings each week over at Pick 6. Been enjoying playing on the Pick 6 platform each and every week of the NFL season. Think a certain quarterback will throw for more than 300 yards. How about your favorite receiver scoring a touchdown? Check out Pick 6, the newest way to play fantasy football and win cash right now with DraftKings. Here's how it works. Just pick 2 to 6 players of the same sport and choose if they'll have more or less of a given stat. Yards, catches, touchdowns, etc. Lock in those picks and compete against opponents for a shot at huge cash prizes. Download the new DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use our code ROTOPICK. That's ROTOPICK. Again, ROTOPICK, ROTOPICK. If you're a new Pick 6 customer, play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits guaranteed. Just use that code, ROTOPICK. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-78-89-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, we're back and again talking waiver wire running backs. Most of our top 5 list had had involved in some facets, some of these backup guys like Trey Sermon in the past weeks. Well, now it's your Tyrone Tracy's, your Sean Tuckers, your Isaac Guerendo's, Ray Davis of the world.
Sean Tucker actually didn't make the top 5, but he's definitely worth discussing.
Yeah, you're right, Ray. I was Kamani Vidal. Like they're all different levels of the same paint. Like, remember you go to the paint and you're like, I want blue, and well, here's sky blue and here's magenta blue. It's like, no, I just want blue. That's what I feel like with these backup running backs. So give me go ahead and give me some of the list here.
So I didn't put Tyrone Tracy in my top 5. I was tempted to do that. He's only 45% rostered in Yahoo leagues. He's definitely earned a share of that work when Devin Singletary comes back. I think he's better than Devin Singletary.
I would too. I would agree as well.
So he would be, I guess, the number 1 option. We discussed Ray Davis. He was my top pickup. He was in your top 5. It's going to depend a little bit on Cook, but like Tyrone Tracy, Ray Davis has went out and earned himself a role when James Cook comes back. So that's the guy that you want there. You can go ahead and cut Ty Johnson, because Ty Johnson had 4 carries and 0 targets in that game. Ty Johnson's supposed to be the pass catching back, right? But no targets. It was pretty telling, whereas Ray Davis got 3. So, interesting there. We talked about Isaac Guerendo at the top of the show. Talked about the Jordan Mason injury. The fact
Christian McCaffrey, I mean, with the bye week with week 9.
Yep.
I think he comes back after the bye.
Yeah, that makes sense. I bumped Guerendo down on this list a little bit because he was actually outsnapped by Patrick Taylor in the second half after Jordan Mason came out, and most of his production came from one big play. He's fast. That can happen again. But definitely a few notches off the top pickups. Then we go to one running back that we didn't talk about, and that's Sean Tucker of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He basically, with Rachaad White out, he had a timeshare with Bucky Irving. That game was an absolute shootout, but Sean Tucker played really well. Honestly, when I kept seeing on the bottom line, I thought in my head that Sean Tucker was like a backup receiver or something. I didn't even know that he was the backup running back until there he is. But no, he had a seriously good game. Both Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving might be startable in the right matchup if Rachaad White doesn't play. But Sean Tucker just went down on this list because I assume when Rachaad White comes back, it'll go back to where it was before, and Sean Tucker will probably be irrelevant, right? So his circumstances or his chances to have another game like this are a lot lower than the other players on this list.
And this comes from Jerry Donabedian's box score breakdown article, which is the one that we reference often. I think Jerry does a fantastic job. And if you love data, but also you don't want to watch every single game from a counting snaps perspective, it's immensely helpful. So yeah, Bucky Irving getting 74% of the first half snaps. That was when the Saints were up 27-24. Olave had a fumble when he got concussed. They got returned for touchdown. It was a fluky game, like fluky first half, but the Buccaneers ended up going up 28-3 in the second half. And there was a lot of garbage time benefit for Sean Tucker. He had 64 yards and a touchdown during that garbage time production. Irving got carries as well too, but like that's the part of things. The one part that I'm having a hard time like thinking through mentally, like I watched highlights of that game. I think Sean Tucker looks like a better running back than Rachaad White. I know Bucky Irving looks like a better running back than Rachaad White, and we, at least myself, I call myself a disciple of Mario Puig and John McKechnie. They loved Sean Tucker coming out of Syracuse. My guy Brian Drake as well too, another one of the fantasy analysts out there. He was all over Sean Tucker. So I think Sean Tucker is actually like just a really capable running back. Yep. And if Rachaad White, once he comes back from injury, just gets pushed aside because you can't put that genie back in the bottle, I wouldn't be surprised. So in deeper leagues, really deeper leagues, I'll be considering Sean Tucker, but not your 12-team friends and family. It's more like the industry ones where Sean Tucker probably gets picked up in.
Yep, exactly. Where everyone's so on top of it, that's the only option left. I got some running back quick hitters. I'm just going to run through these quickly. Who the heck knows what's going on in Jacksonville, but D'Ernest Johnson had 77% of second half snaps compared to 20% for Tank Bigsby. Maybe just a game flow situation. They were pretty far behind in that game. But, just throwing that out there, D'Ernest Johnson and Tank Bigsby might be splitting that work share for as long as ETN remains out. Dameon Pierce is back, and he had a nice touchdown. I still don't believe he is that good, but he is the Joe Mixon backup, which means Cam Akers can be cut now.
Thank God.
As Dameon Pierce is second on I had to start Cam Akers like 3 times in our Dynasty League. Packers, Marshawn Lloyd coming off the IR soon, possibly. Yep. Just throwing that out there. Again, has to be pretty deep to take a stab at this, but again, these are quick hits. Estime.
Estime.
Estime. I got to do like estimate, right? See,
Yep.
I can't even pronounce his name. I'm not quite on the John Mario college train quite, but he made his debut. He's still running back 3 for Denver. I know there are a lot of believers in him this year, but now the fact that he's actually playing, I guess, is maybe worth noting. And then, I had a note about Kamani Vidal, but you already covered him as a high-end RB2, similar vein as a lot of these other guys.
I would have Vidal ranked above this group, and like above Sean Tucker, who I just talked about
Above Sean
positively.
Tucker,
yeah, I'd have him above Sean Tucker, but below obviously the Ray Davis of the world, and
Yeah.
maybe even like Dameon Pierce, who's got like a 1-for-1 in there. If Dobbins were to get injured, Edwards would be back at a certain point and would assume some workload, but Hassan Haskins would do some stuff, even though I don't think he's very good, former Titans, I think 3rd round pick. So just Vidal needs to be picked up and get in deeper leagues in the same vein that Sean Tucker could, but not actionable necessarily.
To recap here, the tiers of the running backs, you have Tracy Davis, Guerrendo, then another tier, Sean Tucker and Vidal, and then all those other quick hitters I just talked about.
Yeah, that's
those
beautiful.
Those are stabs. That's how we kind of break it up this week.
All right, one last word from our sponsors, paying the bills from Blue Wire. All right, we're back and talking receivers. And again, it's kind of a similar list than what we've done in the past. Demario Douglas, we spent a lot of time in last week's show because around this time of the show, it was announced that Drake Maye was our starting quarterback. That's why Demario Douglas is number 1 on my list from a full point PPR perspective, or even, I think, half point. Douglas is going to get fed the ball a lot. The Patriots offense is going to look significantly different. There are going to be turnovers as part of having a rookie quarterback, Jake, and that just means more time for the offense to be on the field in positive passing game scripts. Demario Douglas should be far above our 50% roster threshold by the end of the week.
I mean, even last year, I started Demario Douglas in a couple places, and in their final garbage time drive, in which they were down 3 scores and passing the ball through totally open middle of the field, Demario Douglas would get his 8 fantasy points then, right? So there's definitely some upside for Douglas, and I agree with you that he's the top receiver pickup this week. Obviously, Juju Smith-Schuster was in both of ours. He's essentially the replacement Rashee Rice, so check him out. Only 32% rostered after his bye. Another kind of cheat one is Josh Downs at 49%. He's clearly showing that he's wide receiver 2, maybe wide receiver 1, depending on how healthy or not healthy Pittman looks. I was surprised Pittman suited up to play. He went from about to go on IR with a back injury to he's playing now.
It scores the game-winning touchdown while diving and falling on his back. Like, what?
Yeah,
wild.
I mean, then you can't make that up. So that's interesting. Jerry Jeudy, we mentioned in our top pickups, 39%. So a little less available, but I think there's a lot of the people auto-drafted him and didn't pay attention because most people would have dropped him by now.
I would agree with you, yeah.
So yeah, definitely go check for Jerry Jeudy. The other one that I actually replaced this person with Jerry Jeudy in my top 5, but it was real close. I was surprised to see Christian Watson from the Packers was down at 41%. Now, I know a couple weeks ago we were thinking he might be a cut candidate, but he appears to be back from his injury and ready to go. Caught a big play. Actually, both these Packers receivers are interesting now because Dontavian Wicks is now out of the picture, right? They're kind of back to normal where it's Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, and Jaden Reed. And Romeo Doubs is only 35%. I actually went against someone who started Romeo Doubs in a 12-team league this week. I don't know if it's just homer territory up here, but I got burned by that a little bit because
you got injured. He's going to be out for a couple weeks, or at least it's week to week now, Dontavian Wicks.
Yeah, exactly. So it's back to being Watson, Doubs, and obviously Jaden Reed is rostered everywhere, but I think Watson and Doubs should both be rostered with how good Jordan Love's been looking, and Watson is probably the bigger play guy, but Doubs gets a lot of red zone love as well. And we've said this before on the show many times. Love just loves to find Romeo Doubs in the zone. He always beats that coverage. He finds those holes, especially and when they scramble, there's some chemistry there. Now, Doubs had that issue last week where he wasn't showing up with the facility, deleted all the Packers stuff from his social media, got suspended last week. You thought, okay, what's going to happen now? And now it's looking more like it was with Jair Alexander last year with the Packers, where they just kind of gave him a week off, cooled off. You're suspended, whatever. Now you're back and you're ready to contribute to winning, and he certainly did that last week against Arizona. So Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, both on the radar at least for the waiver wire.
Yeah, certainly. I had said Christian Watson was a drop candidate even as of last week, but we had news that it was not a high ankle sprain, therefore he wasn't going to be out for 4 weeks.
I expected him to be out longer.
It changes the narrative a little bit. Yeah. And I guess I had forgot about the Rashid Shaheed injury when we were talking about this, but if Olave again does not play in a short week Thursday, Broncos cornerback Patrick Surtain, who I think is one of the best in the league, might be also out for this contest. And Rashid Shaheed was banged up, dealing with an injury too. Bub Means, the winner of the name fantasy contest right now, Bub Means, in your deeper leagues might be that start and pick up and play immediately available guy with the way the Saints look like.
Yeah, that feels like one of the Marvel moments. Hey, we're using fake names now? Okay, I'm Spider-Man. Like,
yes.
Right. So, Bub Means 70% of the snaps, targeted 8 times, which is actually a team high, tied with Alvin Kamara for the team high. And he caught 5 of those for 45 and a touchdown. He played every snap in 2 wide receiver formations. You can obviously tell I've got Jerry's article up here. 71% snaps in 11 personnel. Other guys benefited too, but Bub Means was oddly the guy that came out and benefited the most. So how much you can hope for that target volume again. You can hope for another high-scoring game. You can hope Spencer Rattler plays somewhat well in this situation. But yeah, Bub Means is worth a mention, and not just because of his name.
All right, would you play Bub Means or Trey Tucker now with Davante Adams gone in Stake League this week, Jake?
I'd play Trey Tucker.
Okay, I think I would too, but the idea
even
of
after the 0 I took
a monster
this week,
game from Bub Means to keep my Stake League season alive is kind of a nice idea.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I'm like right on the self-buyer line, and I'm 5-1, so I've had some points luck this year so far.
I looked through a few of my other leagues that were like industry ones, but deeper formats. The same names we've mentioned past weeks, Michael Wilson, especially if Marvin Harrison is out with that concussion, which he left Sunday's loss to the Packers for. Michael Wilson be a pick up and play. Rashad Bateman now has a touchdown in 2 consecutive games. Ravens had another good matchup from a passing perspective. We've talked about these guys before, so I'm not emphasizing them, but I would probably have Michael Wilson a little bit higher on my list, certainly over Bub Means. If I had that
Williams
option.
for sure. Michael Williams was a playable.
Michael Wilson.
Wilson. Yeah, sorry.
You're good.
I'm mixing Mike Williams, who's on the real life trading block. No, Michael Wilson was a playable wide receiver before this whole Marvin Harrison situation played out. He got a fair amount of volume, some red zone work too. If Harrison's out, then Michael Wilson definitely jumps big time. I would put him. It's like Michael Wilson or Romeo Doubs. Who do you start in that situation?
I think Michael Wilson this week, but the value for Doubs is for rest of season. That you have Jordan Love, who's missed 2 games, that is tied for the most passing touchdowns in the NFL right now. I'm not sure if you're aware of that stat. So that's the benefit of Romeo Doubs. Well, it hurts my Josh Jacobs fantasy value, but that's fine. Well, there's going to be a hot streak.
It'll even out. It's going to regress to the mean.
Yes. I think we covered a lot of this stuff really well, despite spending about 15 minutes from a trade perspective. You can go back earlier in the show, talk about Amari Cooper and Davante Adams, the fallout from all 4 sides of those 2 trades today.
And trade scenarios as well. We did.
Yes, I really do. Send your trade scenarios or accomplished trades, completed trades to me at JB Fantasy Sports on Twitter. I'm compiling these because I'm doing a lot of different media stuff throughout the week that I'm going to have to answer questions for, and I don't have answers to those questions. So if the users can help me out, that would be fantastic. Real quick, Jake, let's do the tight ends because
it's ugly.
It's purgatory as usual.
Exactly. I have to mention Mark Andrews just because someone rage dropped him in a league, and I picked him up on the second round of Fab for $3. I'm pretty happy about that. 85% rostered. Hunter Henry's only 26% rostered. I think he'll be relevant now. He was kind of relevant before, but he definitely gets a bump with a somewhat competent quarterback that can kind of move the ball as opposed to an incompetent one that cannot. So bump for Hunter Henry. Dalton Schultz is 70%, so he barely fits, but he's been getting the added targets with Nico Collins out, so that's interesting. Noah Fant, 27% roster. Yeah, he now has back-to-back games with at least 69% snap share and 71% route share. Thanks, Jerry, again for that. But the volume is definitely there for Noah Fant to eventually have some games. And if you need a real deep cut, I personally have to replace Dallas Goedert in a couple places. He left early with a hamstring injury. We don't know the exact diagnosis there yet, or maybe we do, and I just haven't looked it up yet. Grant Calcaterra is technically the backup there. I'm sure there's a 2 tight end league somewhere where he will be picked up this week. So that's it for tight ends. I'd still prefer like someone like Cade Otton, who's right around that tight end line. I'll take the 8 points from him on a week-to-week basis instead of gambling with some of these guys.
Yeah, that's fair. And then defensively, from a streamer perspective, you go against the Browns every week, this case the Bengals, whose defense hasn't looked very good. So it's the movable object versus the immovable offense. Is that kind of the way? I know it's a bad way of the
stoppable force against the movable object, right?
It's beautiful, Jake. Thank you.
For.
Yeah.
Stoppable
Bengals
force against the movable object.
The stoppable force is not something I describe to Sean Watson. Well, I guess maybe his fantasy play. And I'm playing the Bengals defense over him every single time. Obviously, I think you're playing the Broncos defense against Spencer Rattler and Bub Means, but you could probably play the Saints defense against Bo Nixon as well too.
I actually lean towards the Saints just because the home team in the short week situation.
Absolutely.
I think either side of this matchup's fine. It's going to be a low scoring game, but Bo Nix likes to run around and turn the ball over a little bit too. So they could easily go both ways. If you really want to dig deep, the Rams 2% rostered are versus Vegas, and Colts 26% are home against the Dolphins.
And real quick, because I think this is going to be relevant, we talked about Amari Cooper going to the Bills, probably not the fantasy fault from everyone else, but with Amari Cooper being traded to the Bills, is Khalil Shakir droppable for Demario Douglas, Juju Smith-Schuster, or Christian Watson?
The answer is yes. And if he's asking which one, I think PPR would be Douglas. Non-PPR would be a coin toss between the other two. I
think in standard, it's
Douglas
Christian
is more
Watson.
consistent. Douglas is more consistent.
In standard, it's Christian Watson, but PPR, it's Douglas, then Juju, then Christian Watson. But yes, I think Khalil Shakir in this sort of format, I assume a little bit shallower, would be somebody that'd be dropping for unequivocally for at least two of these guys. So that does it for us on this edition. Again, the trade heavy edition of the Tuesday Waiver Wire show. Again, if you have trades that you've pulled off for Amari Cooper and Davante Adams, or you've sent them away, at least in the case of Amari Cooper, let me know on JB Fantasy Sports on Twitter. I want to hear kind of the fallout as to what the final value is for Amari Cooper before he plays his first game for the Bills, presumably next week. So thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back again next week.